we are back on this Tuesday afternoon. It's safe to say that I needed this. I needed a positive. I needed to be back here in the studio, getting a show ready for you guys, because while I did have a good weekend, fantasy-wise, I went 6-0 in fantasy football this weekend. That's always a good sign. But I saw the Browns get embarrassed. I saw the Cavs lose yet again, making that 4th straight for them. It wasn't a good weekend for my real-life teams, to say the least. However, today marks exactly 1 month into the NBA season, and I wanted to talk about 7 things that we've learned to this point. Yeah, it should be some fun. This is your early reminder to drop a like on the stream, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. The support has been amazing. You guys, like I said, you're going to get sick of me showing my gratitude towards you all. But without further ado, welcome to the Anomaly Podcast. I'm your host, Owen Stiftar. Let's enlighten ourselves on what we've learned 1 month into the NBA season. Number 1, the first thing that I wanted to cover, and it's the most glaring, this is the best Bucks team ever. I don't want to overreact, saying that we're only 10 or so games into the season, but this might be the best Milwaukee Bucks team of all time. I said it. Coming into the season, myself, just like many others, we had the Bucks as the best team in basketball and winning the championship eventually. But with Chris Middleton missing some time to start the year, and just the thought that they wouldn't prioritize regular season basketball as much as they have in the past with Giannis, I thought they'd struggle out the gate, maybe be the 4-5 seed at this point in the season and, eventually turn it up. But I was wrong. This Milwaukee Bucks team started off 9-0. They're currently 11-2, first in the Eastern Conference. The thing about this Bucks team that's different is, they look like a completely different team. Let me explain. One of the biggest things this year is that they're adjusting. The biggest stigma around Coach Bud, obviously coach of the Milwaukee Bucks, throughout his entire career, whether it's from game 1 of the regular season to game 82 of the regular season, plus however many playoff games and series that he's had, Coach Bud is going to stick to his schemes and his philosophies no matter what. Now I don't want to diminish these schemes that he loves, right? Because they've been dang good in the regular season. Let's not forget he was the coach of those 50 to 60 win Atlanta Hawks teams that controlled home court for a couple years in the Eastern Conference in the mid-2010s. Then obviously, he was let go. He was brought over to Milwaukee, and he brought those schemes and the same philosophies that he's always had. And they've had similar regular season success, but this time, obviously, he got a championship out of it, right, in 2020. But a big reason he had that championship run is because, I'll say this, the big reason why he's only had one championship run is because come playoff time, when the opposing team has 7 games in a series to slowly lock in on you and your tendencies, that team is eventually going to find something that works, and they're going to stick to it because they know that Coach Bud never adjusts. But in that title run, if you guys do remember, it took Giannis to publicly come out after Game 6 of that series against the Nets and say that he wanted to guard KD in Game 7. He wanted that responsibility. He wanted to take KD in Game 7. It took Giannis to publicly say that for Coach Bud to make an adjustment and realize that, hey, we were up 2-1 or whatever they were in that series. Something's not working. Let's make an adjustment. Now, KD still went out there and he almost had 50. I mean, he was one shoe size away, if that, from maybe taking that Nets team to the finals without Kyrie Irving. But at the end of the day, that Giannis adjustment is a big reason why they won the finals when we look back at it. When they getting out of that series was the biggest challenge for them that playoff run, and that adjustment might as well have been the best adjustment of the playoffs. But now, like I said, the season has looked completely different for them. We know Coach Bud's philosophy with this Bucks team has always been to protect the rim, let Giannis be the exceptional help defender that he's always been, and give up corner threes. Based off their analytics team, they felt like that was the best way to go, was to give up the corner three. Excuse me. But this season, that's changed. Now again, I don't want to overreact. We're only 13 games into the season for them. But I have the numbers to back up why I'm saying this Bucks team is different. I'm getting these numbers from a website that isn't paying me, so I won't say which website. But regardless, last season, 41% of the shots that the Bucks gave up to opposing teams, so meaning the percentage of shots that the opposing team took against the Bucks, right? 41% of those were threes, which ranked second most in the league percentage-wise, which obviously isn't good, saying it's a three-point driven basketball league. But this season, they've brought that all the way down to 31%, which is the second best. So just a 10% difference in the percentage of shots that they've given up takes them from 28th in the league to second. Or 29th in the league, to second. So big jump there for this season. But let's not forget, they haven't taken a dip in protecting the rim either. This season, around 30% of the shots taken against them have been in the paint, which is the fifth best. I'll have graphics up there. Don't make too much fun of me in the live chat or in the comments after the video is published. I wanted to give non-basketball watchers a visual of what I was talking about there with giving up the corner threes and how they've eliminated that and made the changes this season. But I also have the numbers up there for how they've protected the three and the rim this season. But somehow, some way, they have forced their opponents to take the forbidden shot in basketball in 2022. That's the long mid-range shot, or just the mid-range shot in general. Unless you're DeMar DeRozan, that is the worst shot in basketball for you to take. And the Bucks that's the only thing that they're giving up. And all of this leads to them having the number one defense in the NBA. Let's not forget, they also have the best player in the NBA in Giannis, who, if he gets his third MVP this season, we got to start having a conversation and if he's top 10 of all time. I know that might sound crazy because he is a current player, but his resume is there at 26, 27 years old already. And let's also not forget they have a multi-time all-star on deck. He's on ice in Chris Middleton. We're obviously waiting for his return to the lineup. And, hey, he's the perfect Robin to Giannis's Batman. So the perfect mesh there. They also have great depth on this team. They have Drew Holiday, who some would say is the second best player on this team. They have, Bobby Portis, Javon Carter, Brook Lopez. Those are the type of guys on this team that, Grayson Allen too when he returns. These are the gritty guys that do all the dirty work and do the necessary work that make this team dangerous come playoff time. And, I don't want to gloss over, Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday. I've talked about it a lot on this show. I believe that's one of the most underrated built cores that we've ever seen in the NBA ever, right? Drew Holiday, he's a defensive player of the year candidate year in and year out. I don't know. I don't want to gloss over the fact that this core is enough. And then you add on the additional depth pieces. That's what makes this team the best Bucks team of all time. Obviously, it helps with the evolution of the game of basketball. But all in all, I believe, with the perfectly built core and having the best player in basketball as of right now, this is the best Bucks team we've ever seen, and that is the first thing that I have learned 1 month into this NBA season. The second thing I've learned, or that we have learned as fans, is that the returning stars, they've been great for the most part, right? For the most part. Obviously, with returning stars, I mean people who missed some time last year, whether they were hurt or suspended or just refused to play for their team. They're back, and they're returning stars, and most of them have been great. We'll start with Kawhi and John Wall. They're both on the Clippers, obviously. We've talked a lot about Kawhi on this show already. I just want to see him play consistently. I'm frustrated with him just with how great of a player he is, and we don't get to see that on the court, most nights. I just want to see him play consistently. For John Wall, he's looked like the same player that we've always seen, throughout his career. Obviously he's lost a step, but for the most part, his role is the same. He just has less pressure, right? Regardless, John Wall, he's been very exciting to watch. He's shown a lot of flashes of his older self, and he'll be a big piece come playoff time. I believe we gloss over that when we look at the Clippers team. Next up, we have Zion. Zion, he's looked great. He's looked better than ever this season. He's averaging 24, 6, and 4 on, the efficient numbers that he always has. He's cutting down on how many times he's been blocked this season. With him being a 6'6" power forward, obviously he can jump out the gym, but in the first couple of years of his career, he was always the most blocked player in the league. He's cut down on that, and he's actually below average in the league right now. But this Pels team, they're from top to bottom, they're set to shock a lot of people come playoff time with their depth and with their, I'll say it, with their star power. And it all starts with Zion. I will say he has to be better defensively, with Zion. It feels like he's a bottom tier defender. I hate to admit that, but it seems like Zion is a bottom tier defender. When you watch him, it's very frustrating. Hopefully he can pick that up come playoff time, because some people will say it's just an effort thing, right? But next up, we're going to have Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. They're both play for the Nuggets. They're both returning off of devastating injuries last year, and they both make this team very dangerous, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, that's where they specialize. But Jamal, we'll start with Jamal, and then we'll move to MPJ. Jamal, he's off to a slower start than we would like this season, especially 1 month into the year. But I expect him to pick it up. His game is relied on the perimeter side of the game. It's not like he's a super bouncy player, right? So I expect he's going to get more and more comfortable as the season goes on. Again, we're only 10, 15 games into the year. Give Jamal some time to readjust. For Michael Porter, he's been himself. One thing we know about Michael Porter is that if he touches the ball, expect him to shoot it. That's one thing we know about him. But, hey, when he shoots 40+% from 3 at 6'10", averaging 20 points a game, why are you going to stop him from doing that, right? So Michael Porter and Jamal Murray, it's always good to see them back. Now, on a disappointing side of things, Ben Simmons for the Nets, we've talked about him a lot as well. He's been very disappointing. There's no way around it. He was my defensive player of the year, if you guys remember, coming into the season. Not a good look for me, but he's played far from it, and I'm not afraid to admit that. But maybe he could turn around. Obviously they just had the coaching change, going from Steve Nash, who didn't really do anything as a coach, to Jacques Vaughn, who's a very experienced coach in this league. He's had head coaching jobs before. And hey, since Jacques Vaughn has stepped in, that Nets team has turned it around. The third thing we have learned 1 month into the year is that the Lakers are a mess. It's very frustrating. But 13 games in, this team sits at 3-10. It's no secret they lack three-point shooting to this point. They're right now the worst team in the league, shooting only 30% from the three-point line. They're average defensively. Every night it seems like, I'll put it this way, every night it provides another update on the value of Russell Westbrook on it and if he's actually good or not at the game of basketball, which it's sad to see. It's literally the definition of a scapegoat, when obviously Russ is far from the only problem on this Lakers team. But with there being more than 6 months to go or so, season ends in June of this NBA season, the Lakers are just exhausting to watch. I have not finished a Lakers game all year. I watched the first half or the first 3 quarters or the last 3 quarters. I can't sit through a whole game of the Lakers. And that's not a positive sign here in LeBron's 20th season. And that's really, I guess we'll put it this way, that's really the root of the issue with this Lakers team, is the fact that it is LeBron's 20th season. If LeBron wasn't on the clock, there wouldn't be as much urgency with this team. But the whole purpose of having LeBron on your team in his sunset, in his last couple laps around, you gotta compete for a title while you can. And the Lakers are just simply not built to take advantage of LeBron James. They're not built for a title run, and that's why they're just such a headache, is they haven't made any changes so far this season. I'm expecting, I will say, one thing with LeBron, the GM, I'm expecting a busy trade deadline with them in attempt to, I guess, save their season and save LeBron's hopes for maybe a fifth ring, either this season or next. And it just gets me angry watching this team and watching the image of like a Russell Westbrook get ruined with this team and using him as a scapegoat. And it's just from top down, I don't care for this team. I don't care for Darvin Ham as much anymore as I did to start the season. But I don't know. Maybe it's because LeBron's from Cleveland, and maybe it's because he won us a championship. But the most frustrating thing is just seeing arguably the greatest player ever, his last years in the league, go to waste. The fourth thing, and it's going to be a homer pick, but you had to expect that. It's me, and I am a Cleveland fan. The fourth thing we've learned is that Donovan Mitchell was the best offseason acquisition. This past offseason, the Cavs made a big splash. It surprised a lot of us Cavs fans. We were seemingly not in the race for Donovan Mitchell, but then we got Donovan Mitchell. But obviously, it's paid off. Yes, the Cavs are currently slipping. I think we're on a 4 or 5 game losing streak, but we're still 8-5. We're still fourth in the conference. Excuse me. Donovan Mitchell's averaging 32, 5, and 6. I can tell you off the top of my head, when's the last time we've had a player average those numbers? We just talked about them. But Garland and D. Mitch, from watching them, it's been fun because they bounce off of each other very, very fluently, right? It's like I think they mesh perfectly offensively in the backcourt. And that makes this team dangerous come playoff time. For D. Mitch, when he was with the Jazz for all those years, he had all of the offensive load on him. He had to score the ball, play make the ball, do everything offensively. He comes to Cleveland, Darius Garland, he play makes the ball better than most people in the league. So he takes that pressure off of Donovan Mitchell. And for Darius Garland, last year he had to score a lot of the time throughout the season. We get Donovan Mitchell, obviously he's a top-tier scorer in the NBA. That takes the pressure off of Darius Garland. These two mesh perfectly in the backcourt, which is why they can be dangerous come playoff time. But I will say, when we look back at the trade even now with the Jazz's success, the Cavs kind of gave up a haul, not so much talent-wise, but more so picks-wise. If you need a refresher, we gave up Colin Sexton, Lauri Markkanen, Ochai Agbaji. I always struggle to say that name, but we gave up those 3 players, 3 unprotected first and 2 more pick swaps, so 5 first-round picks in total in that draft. So only time will tell if it was worth it. Obviously, we can't tell if it was a good or bad trade. 12 games into the season, 14 games for us, I guess. But I was happy nonetheless. Excuse me. I don't know what I had a drink this morning, and I've just been coughing ever since. Not sure what it is. Maybe it's the weather. But for the best acquisition part of the statement, you can argue, you could say, hey, Jeremy Grant's been playing a heck of a game of basketball over there in Portland. He's been helping them to stay in first place in the West. You can say Ben Simmons. Maybe he can turn around over there in Brooklyn. Or maybe you can say Rudy Gobert for the Minnesota Timberwolves, but obviously that's not working out too well. We're going to skip past that. Really, the only argument here, I guess, would be Jeremy Grant. And give me Donovan Mitchell. Next up, we're going to have the fifth thing that we've learned this far into the NBA season is that Victor Wembanyama, he will inspire a Tankathon. And I didn't add this, but it will be sooner rather than later. If you're not familiar with this phenomenon, Victor is the projected number 1 pick in next year's NBA draft. He's 7'4", and he can do everything. In the words of Giannis Antetokounmpo, who I believe is the best basketball player in the world right now. He said on a podcast with Serge Ibaka, his teammate, that Victor's going to be a problem. He's taller than Rudy Gobert. He rebounds like Rudy Gobert, but dribbles and shoots like Kevin Durant. Those are coming from Giannis. The Greek Freak is his nickname. And if he's calling this guy crazy and he's going to be a problem at 18, 19 years old, we got to look out for him. Victor is viewed as the best prospect since LeBron James, which I know. I've said it a couple times already, and I'll say it again. That comparison gets thrown around a lot, right? But I might believe this one. On a prospect scale, he's 7'4". He has a deep bag offensively. He can move his feet and defend 1 through 5. It sounds like a video game character, something you create when you're just messing around with your friends, right? But it'll be fun to see, as the season moves along, which teams will start to take that dive and unintentionally tank for this once-in-a-lifetime talent, right? I'm excited to see Victor in the league, next year, and though I don't want to ever get to the offseason of basketball, sometimes that is the most exciting part of basketball and the NFL and all that is the offseason. We know when all these players are getting moved and you constantly are throwing around ideas of, oh, this dude meshes with this team perfectly, but this team just lost this guy, So I'm excited. We'll say this. In a month from now, I think that will be the start of when most teams start that dive and start to go after Victor, even though their chances are lower with the updated draft lottery percentages. I think it'll still be fun to see how many teams will take that dive and try and get Victor Wembanyama. The sixth thing that we've learned so far into the season is that a team that we thought would be in the running for Victor, the Jazz, they aren't tanking. The Jazz aren't tanking is the sixth thing that we've learned so far into the season. It's crazy to say that a team that's off to a 10-5 start is perplexing. But here we are with the Jazz. This franchise traded 2 All-Stars and 2 other starters, good starters at that, from last year's team for essentially just enough. They traded those guys for essentially just enough talent to tank and get the generational talent, like I mentioned, in Victor. But they're winning. This Jazz team further proves that players don't tank, organizations try to, right? And what I mean by that is that for the players' sake, there's no gain for them. And if anything, tanking, they'd be purposely losing their job just to see a high draft pick come in and take theirs. They're tanking for no reason. So no, players don't tank. It's organizations try their best to. Lauri Markkanen, he's been the biggest bright spot for this team, and I want to start with him here. He's shown flashes. He's always shown flashes in his career of how great he could be in the NBA for his long term. But he's never looked this fluid. He's never looked this great on both sides of the ball. And the other young stars on this team, like Colin Sexton, Jared Vanderbilt, Walker Kessler, probably one of the best backup bigs in the NBA, they've all had their moments. While veterans like Mike Conley and Kelly Olynyk, Jordan Clarkson, they're also all showing out, in increased roles, right? We'll put it that way. But a lot of this team's success can be contributed to their coach, Will Hardy. I underrated him as a coach. He's proved me wrong. He's got them boys playing. As simple as that. But for this team's construction, right, when we take a step back, I do hope that they, in a sense, fall back down to earth and they are able to get a high pick. Because it'll be fun to see, it would be fun to see Victor with this team, with a Lauri Markkanen and Jordan Clarkson, Mike Conley. Mike Conley's on a contract year, so he'll be out of there. But regardless, like I'm saying, we have Walker Kessler. We have promising young talent on this team like Colin Sexton, like Jared Vanderbilt, that pairing those four or five of these young pieces with a Victor Wembanyama, I mean, that sets them up with all the additional draft picks that they have going forward for a nice rebuild. Regardless, it'll be fun to see if this team will continue to stay in the playoff mix or if they will eventually fall down to earth and get a higher pick. The seventh and last thing that we have learned so far into this NBA season, which, by the way, we are flying. I don't know what it is with me and our podcast lately. Maybe I'm just getting straight to the point. Maybe I'm not going on all those tangents. You guys always would make fun of me for that in the first couple. But yeah, I mean, we're only 25 minutes in. Let's get back to it. The seventh thing that we've learned this season, you guys have already read it, is that this season we will have one of the best MVP races in a long time. Multiple MVP caliber players are competing in this, in the same season. I'll put it this way: multiple MVP caliber players competing in the same season. It feels like the new norm, right? Last couple years we've had that with Giannis Antetokounmpo and Joel Embiid, and for what they both did the last 2 years, they should have won the award. Giannis last year obviously killed it, and the year before that, I mean, that would give him 4 straight. But obviously, voter fatigue plays a part. But also for Joel Embiid, I mean, he's been amazing. 2 years ago, he was the 1 seed. Last year was the 2 seed for the 3 seed, excuse me, with the Sixers. So both of those guys have played amazing. They just happen to be up against 2 of the greatest individual seasons in league history. As we know, Nikola Jokic, center of the Denver Nuggets, he's won back-to-back MVPs. A big reason to that is Jokic has put up 2 of the 3 greatest plus-minus seasons of all time, which is, to my understanding, it's the biggest advanced metric that the voters use when it comes to the MVP award. But all 3 of these guys are seemingly in the running, well, once again, being Giannis, Joel Embiid, and Nikola Jokic. But what makes this season different is you can make a legitimate argument that with these 3 guys, there's about 4 or 5 other guys so far this season you can make a case for. Well, we can start with the obvious. Second odds-on favorite, according to Vegas right now, Luka Doncic. The Mavs are currently, they currently sit at 7-5, middle of the West. But Luka's been their everything. He's averaging 34 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists, 2 steals a game. There's a reason why he's a favorite for the award. I mean, he's putting up video game type stats. But this team's success, it relies solely on Luka. If this team is going to be relevant, it's because Luka is making them relevant. And for that reason alone, that is why I view him and many others view him as a legitimate candidate. Next, the next guy we could talk about would have to be the feel-good story of Damian Lillard. Now, obviously not running from the grind. This Blazers team is first in the Western Conference, and they look like a legitimate playoff team. I mean, when we go back to their most successful year and in the Damian Lillard era, which I believe was 2018, 2019, or maybe it was 2017, 2018, regardless, it was the year that they lost in the Western Conference Finals to the Warriors. Obviously, I think they were swept, or maybe they took a game. Regardless, on those 2 teams, they had perimeter defenders in Al-Farouq Aminu, in Mo Harkless. Let's not forget Rodney Hood was off the bench for one of those years. And they lost all of those guys in the offseason. And since that point, since that 1 year that they went that far, they've lacked perimeter defense. But this year, with guys like Josh Hart and Jeremy Grant on the wing, they have that perimeter defense once again. But this time, instead of Aminu and Mo Harkless that couldn't really shoot, these guys can shoot. Josh Hart can shoot, and so can Jeremy Grant, and consistently at that. They've also hit on their rookie draft pick in Shaedon Sharpe, who he's been amazing so far. Ant has taken a step, and he's been great so far. All of this is to say that with Damian Lillard at the helm, obviously he's the best player on the team. We know what he can do, and we know what he's always done. If this team can stay top 3 in the West, I would love to see Dame being a top 3 in the award. But next up, I mean, we're going to move to the Eastern Conference with Jason Tatum. We talked about Giannis and the Bucks earlier, and we talked about him a lot at that. But this Celtics team is right there. I mean, they're only one game behind the Bucks in the East, and they've had a lot to deal with in the early part of the season. Obviously with the coaching situation, Ime Udoka, and even recently when there was the rumor that he was going to take over for the Brooklyn Nets, obviously Jacques Vaughn has taken that position. But despite the coaching change, for the Celtics, they're winding up to be a great regular season team. Tatum's averaging 32-7 a game on great splits, being the number one option that he needs to be. And they were the 2 seed last year. Honestly, if they can just replicate what they did last year, Tatum's argument will be there for this Celtics team, and he can maybe surprisingly grab the award. I don't remember the last Celtic to win the MVP. Was it Larry Bird? I'm not sure. But next up we have Ja Morant. And we're going to go back to the Western Conference for this one. He's been right there with Dame for MVP if fans had all of the control. And what I mean by that is if, just the regular media, if it came down to them, I'm assuming 2 of the top 3 guys will be Damian Lillard and Ja Morant. But but he's been electrifying. I'm not talking about The Rock. But for Ja Morant, he's had career highs in every major statistical category this season. And, like I said, for this Memphis team, they're currently in the middle of the West. The record would need to improve. They would need to be top 3. But he's everything for Memphis. And with Desmond Bane, I got a report this morning saying that he's out for 2 to 3 weeks. If Ja Morant can keep this team where they're at or even improve, I mean, this early part of the season, that will play a part in his MVP argument going forward. I also want to show some love to Devin Booker. Despite no depth on that Phoenix Suns team, they still haven't traded Jay Crowder. And with the aging of CP3, CP3 is the definition of the traditional point guard nowadays. It seems like CP3 can't do anything but play make. He can't score the ball anymore. His age is father time is catching up, right? But D-Book has taken that step, and he's keeping the Suns team a top 3 team in the West. It doesn't make any sense, but he looks better on offense than he ever has before. D-Book has his argument. I wanted to show some love to him. All 7 of these candidates, all of this was to say that we have a legitimate 7 to 8 guys in the NBA that have a case for the MVP this season. And that's a far bigger field than we've had in a long time. Last couple years it's been 3 or 4, and I haven't remembered a time where, because before these last couple years with Giannis and Jokic dominating, it was really just LeBron and whoever had a good year that year. So it was Russell Westbrook the one year, James Harden the one year, Steph Curry got in there for a couple. We haven't had a field this deep in a long time, and for a lot of these teams, I don't see them falling off dramatically, making all of their cases pretty relevant. But that's going to do it. That was 7 things that we learned so far this season. I believe, let me see if I can recite them off the top of my head. So we had the Bucks. This is the best Milwaukee Bucks team of all time. I said that most of the returning stars have been great. Obviously for the most part, we have Kawhi and Ben Simmons that are lacking. The third thing I said, the Lakers are a mess. Obviously that's no secret. I'm hoping they can turn it around for the Cleveland fan in me and the LeBron fanboy in me to not have his last couple years wasted in Los Angeles. The fourth thing I said, Donovan Mitchell was the best offseason acquisition. The fifth thing, what was the fifth thing? Oh, Victor Webanyama. I said that he will inspire a tankathon, which we will see probably in a month or 2. The sixth thing I covered was that the Jazz aren't tanking. They have fooled all of us as NBA fans. We don't know anything, and that's why we're sitting on our couch at home while the professionals are handling their business. And of course, the seventh thing, I said that we have a very deep MVP field for the NBA 1 month into the year, and I'm expecting it to stay that way for a long part of the season. But that's going to do it for today's show. I've been trying my best. Right now, we're only at 35 minutes. So this podcast is going to be under 40 minutes. And Thursday's show, we've kind of got a pattern down with our picks of the week, that, our traditional weekly show. And that show probably won't ever surpass 45 minutes again unless we have some crazy drama to talk about. But like I said, that's going to do it for today's show. I've been trying my best to get you guys in and out of here with these podcasts. And if you haven't already, drop a like on the stream, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and turn those post notifications on now, because on Thursday, we'll be releasing another podcast of our Week 11 NFL coverage, which we, safe to say, we desperately need to bounce back on. Yeah, it was a 4-10 week. That's all I'm going to say. But it's been a blessing so far with this channel. I do want to say that. It's been a blessing so far with this channel. We've had 3 straight shows eclipse 100 views to this point. So keep sharing the podcast. Keep getting it out there. All I ask for from new viewers is a shot. I just want a shot. That's all I ask for you guys. If you listen 15 seconds in and say, hey, this is not for me, or I just don't like it, hey, you gave me a shot. That's all I'm asking for. But keep sharing the podcast. I love hearing that you guys are getting that out there and having multiple people listen to it. That means the world to me. And you guys have been amazing. But until Thursday, where we have the NFL coverage, that's going to do it. I'm going to be, I'm out. Peace, love, and hugs. I will see you guys on Thursday. I kind of said that like 4 times in a row, but regardless.